Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
Ghosts of stones past. Jason's wrench hammered a metallic rhythm against the exhaust pipe, a clanging mantra against intrusive thoughts. Grease stained his skin, etching the hardened places on his hands, not from years of automotive work, but from a soldier's grip on a rifle. The familiar reek of motor oil offered a fragile solace, a world apart from the coppery aftertaste of bloodshed that lingered at the edge of his awareness. He cinched down the bolt, and the memory surfaced. A shadowed alleyway, the argent flash of steel, a strangled cry abruptly silenced. He squeezed his eyes shut, banishing the echo. He was Jason Stone, mechanic. The ghost of Kandahar was dead and buried, or so he hoped. Son of a bitch, he spat, tossing the wrench onto the workbench. The sound vibrated through the cramped garage, reverberating off walls plastered with tools and discarded parts. He inhaled deeply, the air promising a return to the ordinary. That's all he craved. The mundane, a life where explosions were confined to faulty engines and screams emanated only from stubborn, rusted machinery. He wiped his hands on a tattered rag, the coarse material barely smudging the grime. Outside, the sun glared off the asphalt, distorting the air in shimmering waves. The distant thrum of traffic, the commonplace symphony of daily life, reached him. He yearned to rejoin it. He skirted the skeletal frame of a '67 Mustang he was painstakingly rebuilding, a chrome and steel testament to his aspiration for a brighter future. Reaching into the small refrigerator, he seized a bottle of water, the condensation slicking his palm. He drained it, the frigid liquid a temporary anesthetic against the heat and gnawing recollections. Through the greasy windowpane, the alley behind the garage appeared unremarkable. Overflowing dumpsters, feral cats scavenging scraps. But in his mind's eye, it morphed into a labyrinth of Afghan streets, a treacherous maze of veiled threats and unseen dangers. "Easy, Stone," he growled, the words a guttural rasp. Just breathe. He needed to locate Liam. He was perpetually in need of locating Liam. The kid, though 25 years old now, he'd forever be the kid to Jason, possessed an uncanny aptitude for attracting misfortune. Some innate radar seemed hardwired to seek out chaos. Jason sighed. The sound weighted with exasperation. He loved his brother with a fierce protectiveness, forged in the fires of a childhood spent deflecting their father's drunken fury. But Liam was a perennial worry, a walking, talking, gambling-afflicted migraine. Speaking of which, he retrieved his phone and punched in Liam's number. It rang unanswered. Spiraling into voicemail, he disconnected. A prickle of unease crawling up his spine. He knew Liam's routine. He should be framing houses downtown. Liam hadn't called in sick. Jason would have been alerted. He redialed, meeting the same sterile silence. "Liam." He barked into the phone, his voice strained. "Call me. Now." He shoved the phone into his pocket, the cool metal a stark reminder of his powerlessness. He longed to escape violence's grasp. He yearned for the soothing rhythm of his quiet life, the simple gratification of breathing life back into broken machines. But if Liam was compromised, all bets were off. The ghost of Kandahar slumbered, but a spark was all it took to wake him. Across town, in the murky gloom of a clandestine poker room, thick with stale cigarette smoke and shattered dreams, Liam was enduring a far less tranquil afternoon. The felt table was threadbare and stained, the air acrid with the stench of cheap beer and desperation. He raked a trembling hand through his already unruly hair, his pulse hammering against his ribs. His palms were clammy as he regarded his hand. A pair of queens, hardly a royal flush, but not worthless. The pot swelled greedily in the center of the table, and the man opposite him, a mountainous figure with a shaved skull and obsidian eyes, was playing with chilling intent. "I'll call your 50, Liam croaked, shoving a stack of chips forward. Attempting to feign a confidence he utterly lacked, the man remained impassive. "And I'll raise you 100. Liam's breath snagged in his throat. He flicked a nervous glance at his rapidly dwindling stack. He was already mired in debt far beyond his capacity to repay. The thought of Jason, of the disappointment etched on his face, stung him. He recalled the disregarded warnings, the broken promises. I fold," he stammered, flinging his cards onto the table. The man's lips peeled back in a predatory grin. He raked the chips toward him, the sound like the tolling of a death bell for Liam's fleeting hopes. "Another rough patch, Liam?" the man rumbled, his voice a guttural threat. Liam swallowed hard, his throat suddenly parched. "Just a string of bad luck, Sal. That's all it is." Sal chuckled, a sound that vibrated through Liam's bones. "Luck runs out, Liam. And you, my friend, are tapped dry." He leaned closer, his breath foul and cloying on Liam's skin. "You owe me, Liam. And I'm not known for my patience." Jason gripped the wrench once more, the familiar heft a tangible reassurance. He snugged another bolt tight, his mind ablaze with possibilities, none of them good. He didn't know the specific depth of Liam's current predicament, but he knew one undeniable truth. He would unearth it, and when he did, someone would suffer. The specter of Jason's past was beginning to stir at a brother's burden. The neon sign of the Dragon's Breath noodle bar flickered, casting a sickly green glow on Liam's face. He tasted bile. Across the small, scarred table, two figures sat like granite gargoyles. Boris, a mountain of muscle barely contained by a cheap suit, cracked his knuckles. Beside him, Anya, with eyes as sharp and cold as winter ice, filed her nails, each stroke deliberate and menacing. "The serpent is displeased, Liam," Anya purred, not looking up. The scent of acetone hung heavy in the air, mixing with the stale grease emanating from the kitchen. Liam swallowed, the movement painfully audible in the cramped space. "I explained, Anya. The deal. It fell through. It wasn't my fault." He hated the tremor in his voice. He was supposed to be smooth, charming, like Jason wasn't. This was a simple card game. Boris chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding together. "The serpent doesn't care for explanations, little bird. Only results. You understand results, duh?" He reached across the table, his massive hand engulfing Liam's wrist. Liam flinched, the metallic tang of fear coating his tongue. "I'll get the money, I swear. Give me a week, just 1 week," he pleaded, his gaze darting between Anya's impassive face and Boris's brutal grip. Anya finally looked up, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The serpent is generous. She appreciates family. But even generosity has its limits. Let this be a lesson, Liam, a very painful lesson, should you fail." Boris squeezed his wrist, a sharp, agonizing pressure building in his bones. Liam bit back a scream. The phone call came just after midnight. Jason was elbows deep in the engine of a beat-up Mustang, the smell of oil and gasoline a comforting aroma in his small garage. The ringtone, a raucous blues riff, shattered the quiet. He wiped his hands on a greasy rag and answered, not bothering to check the ID. "Jason, Jesus, Jason, you gotta help me." Liam's voice was a ragged whisper, thick with panic. Jason's stomach clenched. "Liam, what the hell is going on? Where are you?" I'm in trouble. Big trouble. I owe the serpent. She's gonna..." The line crackled and died. Jason swore, slamming the wrench onto the workbench. He tried calling back, but the line was dead. The serpent. The name was a viper coiled around his heart, squeezing the breath from his lungs. Serafina Volkov. He hadn't heard that name in years, not since he'd walked away from that life, from Kandahar, from the things he'd done. He'd built a life in the relative calm of this auto shop. A life where his biggest problem was a faulty carburetor. He stared at his hands, calloused and stained with grease, but still capable of inflicting unimaginable damage. He remembered the weight of the rifle, the adrenaline surge of combat, the cold, detached precision of his movements. He'd buried that man, the ghost of Kandahar, deep inside. But Liam had a way of digging up the past. He knew what the serpent wanted. She thrived on leverage, on the power to control. She wouldn't hurt Liam outright. Not yet. She'd use him to get to Jason, to pull him back into the mire. Jason closed his eyes. The image of Liam's terrified face burned into his mind. He knew what he had to do. The peace he'd so carefully cultivated shattered like glass. The ghost was stirring. He picked up his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't used in years. A name that represented another life. A darker life. As he pressed the call button, a grim resolve settled over him. He was going back to war. Echoes of the old life. Jason stared at the crumpled betting slip in his hand, the neon glare of the garage sign painting his face in alternating streaks of crimson and electric blue. Liam's handwriting, a frantic scrawl, was barely legible. 10 grand, Tio the Serpent. He crushed the paper tighter, the faint smell of motor oil clinging to his fingers doing little to soothe the gnawing anxiety in his gut. Liam, bless his reckless heart, had landed himself in the deep end again. Damn it, Liam, he muttered, the words lost in the clang of a wrench dropping somewhere in the cavernous space. He knew, logically, he should walk away. Let Liam face the consequences. He'd warned him, countless times, about the dangers of gambling, of running with the wrong crowd, but the image of Liam, bruised and broken, haunted him. The serpent didn't play nice. Jason closed his eyes. The phantom ache of a past life, the sting of desert sand, the weight of a rifle, a constant reminder of the darkness he'd fought so hard to leave behind. That life was supposed to be over. He was supposed to be a mechanic, not a ghost. He opened his eyes. The decision made. He couldn't abandon Liam. Family was all they had. He pulled out his burner phone, the cheap plastic cold against his palm. The number he needed was etched into his memory, a relic of a different kind of war. He hesitated for a moment, then pressed the call button. The line crackled, then a familiar voice, laced with dry amusement, answered. Stone? I thought you were dead, or at least pretending to be. Izzy, Jason said, cutting through the pleasantries. I need your help. A beat of silence. That's a surprise. You usually prefer to suffer in stoic silence. What's the emergency? The serpent. She's got my brother. Serafina Volkov? Interesting. You know I charge extra for dealing with her particular brand of crazy. Just tell me what I need to know. Where to find her operation, her key players. All right, easy tiger. Meet me at the Rusty Mug. Hour from now. And Jason. Izzy's voice turned serious. Be careful. Serafina is not someone you want to underestimate. He found Izzy nestled in a darkened corner booth at the Rusty Mug, nursing a glass of something amber and smelling faintly of trouble. The bar was a dive, but it was her dive, a place where secrets were traded like cheap whiskey. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. Just catching up with old ones, Jason replied, sliding into the booth. Izzy took a long sip of her drink. Serafina's network is extensive. She's got fingers in everything from arms smuggling to high-stakes gambling. Ambitious little viper. Lately, she's been consolidating her power, muscling out the competition. She pulled out a worn tablet and tapped the screen. Images flickered across the display. Grainy surveillance photos, financial ledgers, coded messages. Her main hub is the old textile mill on the docks. Runs a legitimate business front during the day, but at night, it's a different story. Her second-in-command is a brute named Gregor. Built like a tank, not much upstairs, but loyal and utterly ruthless. Izzy zoomed in on a photo of a woman with ice-cold eyes and a predatory smile. Serafina herself. She's smart, Jason. Cunning. She doesn't get her hands dirty, but she orchestrates everything. She enjoys the game, the power. Does she have any weaknesses? Izzy considered for a moment. Sentimentality. She despises it in others, sees it as a vulnerability. But, rumor has it, she has a soft spot for her younger sister, Anya. Keeps her far from the business. Protected. That might be your leverage if you're desperate enough. Jason clenched his jaw. He didn't like the idea of using a family member as bait. But Liam's life was on the line. Anything else? Just this? Izzy said, her gaze locking with his. Don't go in guns blazing, Jason. Serafina is expecting that she'll be ready. You need to be smarter than her. He nodded, the weight of her words settling heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't Kandahar. This was his city, his brother, and a ruthless enemy who knew how to play the game better than most. The old life was back, and it was a fight he couldn't afford to lose, striking the serpent's fangs. The scarred Formica tabletop trembled as Jason pressed down, stale beer slick on his skin. Liam screwed up. He rumbled, the words like gravel in the close air of the dive bar. Across from him, the two bruisers, their scalps gleaming under the dim light, traded uneasy glances. Liam's in deep with Volkov. The man to the left mumbled, eyes fixed on some point beyond Jason's shoulder. Real deep. Jason's fingers dug into the cheap plastic, the table protesting with a sharp creak. Tell me where to find the collector. The one who calls in favors. The right-hand mountain of a man. His face, a topography of old wounds, emitted a dry, humorless rasp. Think you stroll right up to Marco? You're dreaming, tough guy. He spat, the viscous blob landing scant inches from Jason's scuffed boots. Jason didn't react, he simply unfolded his frame, the abruptness of the movement sending the table toppling with a deafening crash. The bar, a grimy haven for the city's underbelly, hushed, pool sticks paused in their arcs. Conversations evaporated. Every eye swiveled towards Jason Stone's towering presence. Fine by me, Jason stated, knuckles popping as he clenched his fists. We'll do it my way. The ensuing brawl was brief and decisive. A shattered nose was the first thug's reward for underestimating him. The second managed a weak swipe at Jason's jaw before being hoisted into the air and driven skull-first into the mahogany bar. Jason was all business, a precision instrument of retribution. He left them moaning on the sticky floor. A jumble of limbs and regrets, Marco's address, scrawled on a greasy napkin, was tucked into the scarred man's pocket. The next few days unfolded in a whirlwind of calculated disruption. Jason systematically dismantled the Serpent's network, piece by painful piece. Drug convoys met fiery ends on lonely stretches of highway, leaving bewildered drivers amidst the wreckage. He stormed illicit gambling dens, scattering high rollers and reducing opulent fixtures to splinters. He even wormed his way into her protection racket, liberating terrified shopkeepers from her suffocating grip. He was a phantom menace, a glitch in the system, sowing discord and vanishing before Volkov could mount a counterattack. That he torched the warehouse, churning out counterfeit bills, the night air thick with the pungent stench of incinerated currency. He neutralized the security cameras at her flagship casino, then unleashed a horde of ravenous rodents onto the gaming floor. The bedlam that ensued passed swiftly into legend. Jason moved with meticulous care. He favored shadowy alleys and blind spots, left no trace, and avoided the media spotlight. He knew he was flirting with disaster. But the thought of Liam steeled his resolve. He had to shield his brother, even if it meant resurrecting the darkness he had fought so hard to suppress. In her penthouse airy, high above the glittering cityscape, Serafina Volkov stalked like a caged tigress. The panorama below reflected her dominion, a kingdom carved from grit and ambition. Now, that kingdom was under siege. He's just one man? She hissed, her voice laced with poison. Dmitri, her enforcer, a monolith of muscle and menace, offered a curt nod. That's the consensus. Serafina. One man. They're calling him the ghost. The serpent froze, her emerald eyes narrowing to predatory slits. The ghost? She echoed, the name a guttural snarl. He's unraveling everything. My product, my clubs, my everything. He's bleeding me dry and making me look vulnerable. She slammed her fist against the glass tabletop, the crystal exploding in a shower of shards. Dmitri recoiled slightly but remained silent. He knew when to tread lightly. Find him, she breathed, her voice a silken threat. Find him and bring him to me. I want to see the face of the insect that dares to sting the serpent. And then I will break him, slowly, agonizingly. He will learn the true definition of fear. A fleeting shadow of trepidation flickered across Dmitri's features, swiftly masked by impassivity. He knew the depths of Serafina's cruelty. He'd witnessed it firsthand. It will be done, he affirmed, dipping his head. He will be brought to you. Serafina pivoted back to the panoramic window, her gaze locked on the sprawling city below. The lights seemed to taunt her, sparkling with a malevolent glee. She would not be cowed. She would not be mocked. She would grind this ghost to dust, and she would make an example of him that would echo through the underworld. The serpent always retaliated, and her venom was invariably lethal. A message in blood. The alley reeked of stale beer and desperation. Liam whistled a jaunty tune, hands shoved deep in his pockets, the bravado a thin shield against the gnawing feeling that he was screwing up. Again. Jason would be furious. He'd promised, sworn even, to stay away from the betting dens. But the buzz had been too tempting, the potential payout too large to ignore. Now, he was dodging shadows and praying he could make it back to the garage before Jason noticed he was gone. A metal clang echoed from the alley mouth ahead. Liam froze. He wasn't alone. 3 figures materialized from the darkness, their faces obscured by the low light, but the glint of steel in their hands was unmistakable. They moved with a practiced efficiency that screamed professional. Liam swallowed hard, the bravado crumbling. "Look, fellas, I don't want any trouble," he stammered, his voice betraying his fear. The largest of the 3, a hulking brute with a shaved head, stepped forward. "The serpent sends her regards," he growled, his voice thick with menace. Liam knew who they were. Volkov's men. He'd heard the stories, whispered in hushed tones in the back rooms of the betting dens, stories of broken bones and vanished debts. He bolted, adrenaline surging through him. He didn't get far. A fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling. He tasted blood, the metallic tang sharp in his mouth. The 3 men descended on him, a whirlwind of fists and boots. Liam fought back, a desperate flailing that did little to deter their assault. He cried out, his voice raw and ragged. The world swam. Then, a roaring engine tore through the night, headlights sliced through the darkness, blinding the attackers momentarily. A beat-up Ford Mustang skidded to a halt, tires squealing. Jason exploded from the car, a storm of fury and motion. He moved with a speed and precision Liam had only glimpsed in the past, a lethal dance honed in faraway lands. The years of quiet life had done little to dull the edge. He slammed into the largest of the men, a brutal tackle that sent them both crashing against the brick wall. The other 2 turned, their attention diverted. Liam used the opportunity to scramble back, cradling his ribs. He watched in a horrified fascination as Jason moved through the attackers. A whirlwind of fists and elbows, he fought with a controlled rage, each blow delivered with devastating force. One went down with a choked gasp, clutching his shattered arm. The other stumbled back, fear etched on his face. The brute, momentarily stunned, rose unsteadily to his feet. Pulling a knife, he lunged at Jason. A desperate gamble. Jason sidestepped the attack with practiced ease, disarming the man with a swift, brutal twist. He held the knife to the man's throat, his eyes burning with a cold, controlled fury. "Tell Volkov," Jason growled, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, "to leave my brother alone." He released the man, shoving him away with contempt. The 2 remaining attackers, their courage broken, scrambled to their feet and fled into the darkness. Jason turned to Liam, his face etched with concern. "Liam, are you all right?" Liam tried to stand, but a sharp pain lanced through his abdomen. He gasped, clutching his side. He looked down, his fingers coming away slick with blood. A crimson stain bloomed on his shirt. He'd been stabbed. Jason swore under his breath, a raw, guttural sound. He dropped to his knees beside Liam, ripping open his shirt to examine the wound. It was deep, too deep. "Damn it, Liam." Jason's voice was tight with suppressed panic. He pressed his hand against the wound, trying to stem the flow of blood. Liam coughed, a fleck of blood splattering on Jason's cheek. "Jason." Liam's voice was weak, barely a whisper. I messed up." Jason ignored the apology, his focus solely on Liam. "Stay with me, Liam. Just stay with me." He carefully lifted Liam into his arms, his face grim. The weight of his brother felt impossibly heavy as Jason carried Liam towards the car. He saw it, scrawled on the brick wall in crimson letters, stark and chilling against the grimy brick. "Next time, it's you." The serpent's message, delivered in blood. Jason's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about Liam's debt anymore. It was a declaration of war. And he, Jason Stone, knew exactly how to fight one. The casino's secrets. Numbers blurred before Izzy's gaze, a disorienting swirl of fiscal trivia. Profit margins, skittish stocks, and veiled offshore dealings. Hours melted away as she scrutinized the digital ledger, fueled by cold coffee and a nagging premonition that Liam's Volkov-bound debt was outlandish, far beyond what casual gambling could explain. Where had the funds vanished, and how were they so neatly channeled to Volkov? She needed her weary eyes, the screen's luminescence mirroring in her dilated pupils. Then, a subtle yet unmistakable pattern revealed itself. A steady stream of revenue, significant sums, disappearing into the Casino Royale's insatiable maw, only to resurface days later, cleansed and legitimized, earmarked for Volkov's sprawling empire. "Jackpot?" she murmured, leaning back against the groan of her chair's protesting springs. The Casino Royale wasn't merely a haven for high rollers. It functioned as an industrial-strength money launderer. The Serpent had been exploiting it for years. She snatched her encrypted phone and dialed Jason's number. He answered quickly, his voice taut with worry. "Anything to report?" "Found it, Jason. The casino. It's not just where Liam bled dry. It's how Volkov scrubs her coffers. A hefty percentage, I'd venture." Silence stretched, heavy with unspoken thought. Izzy could practically visualize the gears grinding in Jason's mind. "So we storm the casino." "Not quite storm," Izzy countered, fingers already flying across the keyboard, summoning blueprints and security protocols. "We infiltrate. We unearth the records. Concrete proof linking Volkov to the whitewashing operation. Expose her. That destabilizes her dominion, perhaps even gifting Liam some bargaining power." "Infiltrate how?" Jason's voice carried a note of grim resolve. "My forte isn't exactly stealth. Which is why you'll be the distraction. Boisterous, irate, impossible to ignore. Think of it as method acting." A hint of a smile played on Izzy's lips. "I'll extract the data. I can breach their defenses, but I need you to orchestrate a diversion." Jason sighed, resignation coloring his tone. "Fine. What role am I playing?" "Something that screams, desperate gambler at rock bottom." A heated exchange. Maybe a tossed drink. Provocative enough to capture security's attention without summoning the police. "And you?" "I'll be a specter. In and out before they register my presence." Across the city, in a lavish, secluded office overlooking the Casino Royale's dazzling panorama, Serafina Volkov monitored the security feeds with a frigid detachment. The casino throbbed with life, the click of chips, the whir of roulette wheels, the hushed undertones of clandestine deals, all blending into a lucrative symphony. She savored a slow sip of her amber-colored drink. Her chief of security, a mountainous figure named Gregor, stood rigidly at attention. "All is proceeding according to plan, Serafina." "According to plan is insufficient, Gregor. It's unremarkable. I demand efficiency. Precision." She pivoted in her chair, her eyes like shards of glacial ice. "I want a registry of every face that enters those doors, an accounting of every transaction that occurs. Nothing eludes my grasp." Gregor's Adam's apple bobbed nervously. "Of course, Serafina. We maintain constant vigilance." "Vigilance is elementary," she snapped, her tone a menacing whisper. "True success requires more. It demands foresight. Anticipation. Eradicate any threat before it takes root." She turned back to the monitors, a fleeting shadow of disquiet flitting across her features, a feeling she promptly banished. The casino was a bastion, impregnable. Or so she thought. Back in Izzy's cramped apartment, the air was stale with the scent of overbrewed coffee and simmering tension. She projected a holographic model of the casino onto the wall, tracing the ventilation shafts with her finger. The server room is subterranean, heavily fortified. However, there's a secondary entry point via the maintenance corridors. Jason scrutinized the projection, his brow furrowed. "Those tunnels will be a squeeze." "Precisely. Which makes them less appealing for patrols. I require roughly 10 minutes alone in the server room." "Can you guarantee me that?" Jason cracked his knuckles, the sound amplified in the confined space. 10 minutes. Consider it a done deal. He met Izzy's gaze, a spark of gratitude flickering in his eyes. "Thanks, Izzy, for undertaking this." Izzy shrugged, averting her eyes. "Hold your thanks, stoned. We haven't even crossed the threshold. And knowing Volkov, gaining entry is the easy part. Extracting ourselves? That's where the real challenge commences." House of Cards. The air tasted of counterfeit wealth and cloying perfume as Jason entered the gaudy casino chandeliers, like frozen waterfalls of light, splashed across a multitude of faces, each reflecting the manic energy of the gaming floor. He adjusted the unfamiliar knot of his borrowed tie, the fabric a subtle chafing reminder of his out-of-placeness. He was a man of wrenches and grit, not champagne flutes and calculated losses. But Liam was drowning, and Jason would wade through rivers of fool's gold to haul him ashore. He navigated the throng, a phantom flitting through the artificial glow. The Serpent's establishment wasn't merely a gambling house. It was a monument to avarice, a testament to her relentless drive. He needed leverage, hard evidence to shatter her grip on Liam. The initial hurdle was a security guard, radiating boredom as he lazily scrutinized IDs near the high-stakes tables. Jason sidestepped him with practiced ease, a skill honed in the dust of Kandahar. A swift assessment of the surroundings, a dip behind a flamboyant floral display, and he was through, dissolving back into the mass of bodies. Deeper in, the security grew teeth. Two brutes, carved from granite, guarded unmarked double doors, their gaze as piercing as obsidian shards. Private. One rumbled, his voice a low seismic tremor. Jason affected a convincing air of confusion. "I was told to meet someone back here," he said, his tone even, his stance relaxed. "Goes by Tony?" The guard sneered. "Tony who?" "Move along, friend." Jason sighed, playing the part of the exasperated client. "Look, I haven't a clue. It was a whole song and dance that he promised me preferential treatment." He reached inside his jacket, his movements languid, deliberate. The guard stiffened. "Hold it right there." This was the chink in the armor he'd been waiting for. His hand erupted into motion, a blur of trained reflexes. One guard wheezed, collapsing, the other bellowed and charged. Jason weaved, spun, and landed a precise kick to the kneecap. The second guard screamed, clutching his shattered joint. Brutal, efficient, devoid of flourish. Speed and silence were paramount, but so was decisive action. He slipped through the double doors and into a somber corridor lined with identical mahogany portals. The air here was frigid, the silence a suffocating blanket. He knew the vault lay somewhere on this level, the Serpent's private cache of secrets and power. He tested the first door, bolt locked. The second, same result. The third, equally unyielding. Frustration needled him. Time was leaking away. A new tack was required. He retreated a pace, his senses on high alert, straining for any clue. The whine of circuits, the muffled murmur of conversation. Then, he caught it. A faint, almost subliminal hum emanating from the far end of the hallway. He moved towards the sound, his fingers brushing the Glock nestled in his waistband. The final door was steel-reinforced, stripped bare of a handle. A keypad glowed with an ominous red light. He had to circumvent it. Now he retrieved a device from his pocket, a custom-built frequency scrambler. He pressed the activation button. The red light stuttered, then died. He punched in a random sequence of digits, gambling on dumb luck. The lock disengaged with a sharp click. Inside, the vault was surprisingly compact, more utilitarian than luxurious. Rows of filing cabinets stood sentinel along the walls, and a single steel desk occupied the center, illuminated by the sterile beam of a security lamp. Mountains of bullion. No overflowing coffers, just paper. He began with the desk, sifting through files until he unearthed a folder marked Project Nightingale. Inside lay documents detailing a web of dubious ventures, clandestine accounts, and handwritten notes incriminating several prominent city officials. The Serpent was playing a hazardous game, burying her tracks with merciless skill. Then he discovered it, a ledger outlining Liam's debt, not to the casino, but directly to the Serpent. The terms were predatory, designed to drain him dry. There were also notes detailing the use of Liam's mechanical aptitude to modify vehicles for undisclosed purposes. A chill snaked down Jason's spine. IT wasn't just about money. She was exploiting him as he photographed the incriminating evidence with his phone. A voice shattered the stillness. "Impressive. However, breaking and entering is generally frowned upon in my establishment, Mr. Stone." Serafina Volkov stood framed in the doorway, a figure sculpted in ebony silk, her gaze like chipped eye in her hand. A silenced pistol gleamed. "I always knew sentimentality was a weakness, Jason." Showdown in the penthouse. The penthouse windows offered a dizzying view of the city, glittering like scattered diamonds. Jason ignored it. His focus was solely on Serafina Volkov, who stood by a polished ebony bar, a half-empty glass of amber liquid swirling in her hand. The air reeked of expensive perfume and simmering menace. "You shouldn't have come, Jason," she said, her voice smooth as silk, yet sharp enough to cut. "This could have all been so simple. Liam pays his debts and everyone walks away." "Liam doesn't owe you anything," Jason growled, his hands clenching into fists. He could feel the thrum of adrenaline, a familiar, unwelcome sensation. Years he'd spent burying the ghost of Kandahar. And here it was, clawing its way back to the surface. Serafina chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent a shiver down his spine. Sentimentality. Such a weakness. He gambled, he lost, and now he pays. Or you do. She set down the glass, the clink echoing in the vast space. "It's a shame, really. You could have been useful." She moved with a speed that belied her elegant appearance, a knife appearing in her hand as if conjured from thin air. The blade flashed under the chandelier light as she lunged. Jason reacted instinctively, dodging the strike and grabbing her wrist. The fight was on. Serafina was strong, faster than he'd anticipated, and clearly trained. She twisted against his grip, her eyes burning with a cold fury. Jason was forced to release her, and she pressed her advantage. A flurry of swift, precise attacks that he parried, blocked, and weaved, buying time to assess her style. It was a brutal dance, a lethal waltz played out on a stage of opulence. He managed to disarm her, the knife skittering across the marble floor. But Serafina was far from defeated. She launched a kick that slammed into his ribs, sending him staggering back. He tasted blood, a metallic tang on his tongue. "You're good?" she hissed, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow. "But you're fighting for the wrong reasons. Loyalty is a liability." He didn't reply, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He saw an opening, a brief flicker of hesitation in her eyes. He lunged, tackling her to the ground. They grappled, a tangle of limbs and fury. Rolling across the expensive rug, he pinned her beneath him, his forearm pressed against her throat. "Where is he?" Jason demanded, his voice a low growl. "Where's Liam?" Serafina's eyes widened, a flicker of something akin to fear in their depths. "He's safe. For now." Suddenly, a deafening alarm blared through the penthouse. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in an infernal glow. Serafina's eyes darted towards the hallway. "What's happening?" she screamed, her voice cracking. Before Jason could react, a figure burst into the room, a chaotic whirlwind of limbs and desperation. It was Liam, bruised, battered, but very much alive. He was holding a fire extinguisher, its nozzle aimed directly at Serafina's guards who were now scrambling into the room. He squeezed the trigger. A cloud of white powder erupted, filling the air, blinding and choking everyone in its path. Chaos reigned. "Jason, run!" Liam yelled, his voice muffled by the extinguisher's roar. Jason hesitated, torn between finishing the fight and getting Liam out of there. Serafina, momentarily stunned, scrambled to her feet, coughing and sputtering. He made his decision. Family first. He grabbed Liam's arm, pulling him towards the shattered remains of the panoramic windows. The wind howled as they stepped onto the narrow balcony, the city stretching out beneath them like a glittering abyss. "You idiot!" Jason shouted over the wind, adrenaline coursing through him. "What did you do?" Liam grinned, a flash of reckless charm in his eyes. "Distraction, brother. You looked like you needed one." He pointed downwards. "Helicopters waiting on the roof of the building across the street. I saw it when they brought me up." Jason stared at him, a mixture of exasperation and reluctant admiration warring within him. Liam, in his own chaotic way, had just bought them a chance, a slim one. Maybe, but a chance nonetheless. "Let's go," Jason said, his voice tight. "And try not to get us killed this time." Redemption and reconciliation. The serpent thrashed beneath him, her designer suit now a ruin of torn fabric and grime. Years of Kandahar, etched into his bones, surged forth as Jason neutralized her with ruthless efficiency. The ornate dagger, once brandished with such arrogance, lay abandoned on the warehouse's filthy concrete. Her eyes, pools of icy disdain moments before, now blazed with thwarted fury. "You fool!" she hissed, a crimson thread trickling from her split lip. You've stirred a hornet's nest, they'll never stop hunting you. Jason increased the pressure, dismissing her threat. The serpent's resistance ebbed. Let them try, he rasped, his voice a low growl. Tonight, it ends. From the shadows, Izzy materialized, her expression a mask of severity. She tossed him industrial zip ties. Took you long enough? She quipped, the usual sardonic edge in her voice. I was starting to contemplate intervention myself. Jason secured the serpent's wrists, then nodded to Izzy, who produced a satellite phone. He punched in a sequence of numbers, waited a heartbeat, then spoke. Stone here, that I have Volkov. Retrieval team, Dock 17, Warehouse District. And bring reinforcements. She travels in rarefied circles. He ended the call. Only the serpent's labored breathing broke the silence. The reality of her capture crashed down, extinguishing the characteristic arrogance, leaving a fragile flicker of authentic fear. No one can shield you now, Jason stated, his tone devoid of inflection. Not any longer. His words became brutally manifest with surprising swiftness. Within hours, the carefully constructed edifice of Serafina Volkov's power, erected over years, began to crumble. News tickers crawled across screens. Arrests, indictments, leaked files exposing crooked officials, dummy corporations, and labyrinthine money laundering systems. The serpent's complex network of influence, once thought invulnerable, was dismantled with chilling speed. Jason watched the cascade of news with dispassionate satisfaction. The city breathed a little easier. For the moment, he found Liam slumped in the corner of their cramped apartment. Head buried in his hands, the apartment, a stark contrast to the opulence Liam craved, felt even smaller. It's over, Jason said softly, easing down beside him. Liam remained unmoving. I screwed up royally, didn't I? He mumbled, his voice thick with shame. I got you tangled in this mess. Again, Jason placed a reassuring hand on his brother's shoulder. This wasn't your fault, Liam. Yes, it was. Liam exploded, finally raising his head, his eyes bloodshot. I thought I could manage it, that I thought I could play in her league, that I wanted to earn your respect. Okay? To prove I wasn't just a perpetual screw-up. The confession hung in the air, naked and vulnerable, that a sharp pang of guilt resonated within Jason as though focused on shielding Liam. He had overlooked his brother's deep-seated need for validation. You don't need to prove anything to me, Liam, Jason said gently. I'm already proud of you. You're my brother. Full stop. Liam's shoulders sagged, the fight seeping out of him. But I keep disappointing you, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I just keep making a mess of things. Everyone stumbles, Liam, Jason replied. What matters is that we learn from our falls. And that we stand together. He drew Liam into an embrace, a rare display of fraternal affection. In that moment, the accumulated years of resentment, the implicit comparisons, the constant weight of responsibility to protect Liam from his own impulses, all seemed to dissipate. I'm going to turn things around, Jason, Liam said, pulling back, his voice steadier. No more betting, no more harebrained schemes. I'm going to find legitimate work, build a life with honest foundations. Jason smiled, a genuine, heartfelt expression that lit up his eyes. I know you can, Liam. I have faith in you. Izzy leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a silent endorsement of their reconciliation. Don't get all sentimental on me, boys, she chimed, breaking the spell. I'm liable to lose my lunch. Jason chuckled, shaking his head. Always the wit, Izzy. Someone has to be, she retorted. Besides, I brought reinforcements of my own, in pizza form. Figured you two could use some greasy solace after all the high drama. The three shared pizza and quiet conversation. The burden of the preceding weeks seemed to lift, supplanted by a tenuous sense of hope. The future remained uncertain, shrouded in shadows, but for the first time in a long time, Jason experienced a fragile equilibrium. He had extricated his brother, he had toppled the serpent, he possessed a slim chance, perhaps, to forge some semblance of normalcy. Maybe a lingering intuition warned him of retaliation from the serpent's remaining associates, a threat he would need to prepare for. But for this night, at least they were safe, and that fragile haven for now would have to suffice.